All right. As you know, we're expecting a lot of decisions to come down before the end of the Supreme Court's term. So we've got some breaking news for you coming from the Supreme Court. The justices have just released their decision on a case involving bump stocks, which you may be familiar with. Their gun accessories. We heard a lot about them after the Las Vegas shooting,
Right.
I think. In a 6-3 vote, the court ruled that bump stocks do not convert a firearm into a machine gun. That is what a bump stock does. It takes sort of a semi-automatic, if I'm using the terms right, and turns it into an automatic, a machine gun, which is banned. So let's bring in CBS News legal contributor and professor at Loyola Law School, Jessica Levinson. And we also have CBS News chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford, joining us now from Washington. So, Jan, I'm actually going to start with you. Can you just kind of give us the basics of the case? Who brought it and what were both sides arguing?
Sure. I mean, we have to go back to 2017, 2018, when, like you said, after that horrific Las Vegas shooting, then President Trump decided he wanted to do something about bump stocks, which, of course, was used in that shooting that ended up killing 60 people. So he directed the Justice Department and the ATF to come up with some regulations where they could ban bump stocks by classifying them, as you explained, as a machine gun, because a bump stock actually attaches to a semi-automatic weapon so that it can fire hundreds of rounds a minute, similar to how a machine gun works, but a different operation, as the court ruled today. So why was that interesting? Well, because the Obama administration repeatedly had concluded that you couldn't do that you couldn't ban bump stocks under the law that banned machine guns because they're so different, and that only Congress could ban bump stocks. So in comes Donald Trump and says, Obama wouldn't ban bump stocks, but I'm going to, and I'm directing my DOJ to pass this regulation. That's what they did. Now, come up now to the Biden administration. A gun dealer challenged that regulation, saying, hey, listen, only Congress can ban bump stocks. And so he sues. And now the Biden administration comes in, is defending it, saying, well, we think we should be able to ban bump stocks too. Today, the court said, no, the Obama administration got it right. Only Congress can do this. And this is a case, in my view, about congressional dysfunction. Here is an issue that 70 to 80% of the American people support, a widely supported gun control measure. And because Congress was unable to ban it, that's when former President Trump stepped in and said, well, they were going to do it. This should go back to Congress, which could pass a law banning bump stocks tomorrow. There's nothing to suggest that would violate the Second Amendment, but they have not been able to have the political will to do it.
So, I mean,
that's your summary.
No,
that's a good
that's
summary.
An excellent summary. And so then, of course, the question to Jessica is it similar to what we were talking about yesterday when it came to mifepristone, which is it's not really about guns and whether one is an automatic weapon or it's not. It's the fact that the Supreme Court is saying this is not the purview of this. Congress should be the one to regulate this, not the President of the United States through executive action.
Well, it's not really about the Second Amendment. I mean, everything that Jan said is, of course, right on, in the sense that this is not about whether or not, under the right to bear arms, under the Constitution, can you ban bump stocks? This is whether or not the ATF, an executive agency, could say semi-automatic weapons plus bump stock equals machine gun, and machine guns are banned under federal law. And the court said, and it's a very technical opinion, so it really is an opinion about guns. I mean, they go into detail about, can you fire one shot by a single function of the trigger? It frankly is an opinion that reads like the oral arguments that really went into the details of how guns function. How much pressure do you need to put on a trigger? But it's not about the constitutionality. Just like yesterday was not about whether or not the right to obtain an abortion is protected under the word liberty in the Due Process Clause, this is not about the Second Amendment saying it is repugnant to try and ban bump stocks. This is about Congress not acting to do so. It's about the wrong actor trying to implement this restriction.
I think that's really interesting, because here we have an accessory that on its own is nothing. It's just an accessory, right? When you add it to a gun, it possibly, you could argue, turns it into a gun that is banned. But the bump stock on its own is just an accessory. That's it. And there are many accessories to guns. Jan, can you talk about just how the vote came down?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with Jessica. I mean, it very much reflected how the justices kind of staked their positions out during the oral arguments, where the conservatives in the majority were focusing on some of the technical words in the law and what is a machine gun and how that trigger operation worked and whether you kept your finger on the trigger or not, or whether you had to repeatedly fire it like it's a semi-automatic weapon. Because, again, what this regulation was trying to do was classify bump stocks as machine guns when they attach them to a semi-automatic weapon. So the conservatives in the majority felt that the semi-automatic weapon with the bump stock just operates differently than a machine gun, and so therefore you can't consider them the same and ban them the same. The liberal justices at argument, and I'm still getting through this opinion, but at argument, and based on my quick summary, are arguing the same thing, that you shouldn't be looking at the trigger and how that works. You should be looking at the fact that it's just spraying hundreds of bullets in a row. So they had a slightly different approach, and that's why they came down the way they did.
So is there any precedent setting here at all, Jessica?
I think the precedent is one we've seen in other cases, which is the Supreme Court saying to Congress, or this isn't the way, or saying to the executive agency, this isn't the way we do this. And we've seen this in other areas. I mean, we saw this in immigration. We saw this in student loans. We've seen this in a number of areas where it's quite clear that Congress had the power to act. They didn't. And so a president tried to act through an executive agency. Maybe it was an environmental regulation. Maybe it was immigration. Again, maybe it was trying to cancel student loans. But in many of the cases, the Supreme Court has been very consistent in saying you are not the right person to try and do this. And we will frankly see more of these cases this term that I know Jan and I will be talking about, where there is a question of the power of executive agencies.
So will this have any impact, I guess, on any other sort of gun modifications? You know, plenty of people modify guns, or it's just not about the gun. It's not about the modification. It's about Congress is the one that regulates this.
Well, I mean, yes. Or you want me to go or you go? I don't know who's answering. Jessica?
No, Jan, sorry.
Well, no, this is obviously, I mean, this is about bump stocks and machine guns. So, I mean, I think, and again, looking right at Congress, there is another big gun control, gun rights case that we're still waiting on that will have, I think, a far-reaching effect on other gun laws. And that is whether or not people who are under domestic violence restraining orders can legally own a gun, or whether they can be subject to gun bans. That, I think, could have a wide-ranging effect on other people who are seeking to possess guns, whether it's felons or drug addicts, and we're waiting on that decision.
And so finally, Jessica, do you think we'll get another decision this morning, or do you believe that the court is done for the day? Or maybe this is a Jan question, but.
All the questions are good, Jan questions. So we got an R number. We are done for the day. We're done for the week. And we can put a lid on the Supreme Court. We have, I think, 22, depending on how you count, big cases left, and just a few weeks. So it's going to be a busy end of June.
All right, Jan and Jessica, always great to have you in these moments. We're going to be talking to you, as you said, Jessica, over the next couple of weeks, probably into early July, but we appreciate it.